Hey, this is Robin. Remember me earlier? I had my dog Thor, our happy dog, rolling around in the yard earlier today. And, we have a product over at Firebird Touch Therapy called Happy Dog Canimeds. And I created it out of the love of my dog Diamond, who was a really awesome older pit bull who had jumped out of my guy's truck and broke her hips. And they were like, oh, she's kind of old and she's not going to probably walk again. But we brought her back around and she did Brody's in the yard and lived another 4 years beyond that, really healthy, using CBD to address her pain. So there's a lot of ways to take care of animals more than just giving them products like CBD or products that you get from your vet. Just like with human beings, animals are what they eat. We are all our nutrition. So I wanted to introduce you guys to my friend Lisa, who has a company called Solely Raw, which is all about raw food for dogs. Here she is.
Hi.
Isn't she lovely? Thanks for coming, Lisa.
Thanks for having me,
Thanks for
Robin.
coming down here. I think that it's, like dogs are wild animals, right? It's kind of hard to imagine that the pug is a wild animal, but, its roots go.
It's hard to figure out how did that come from when they say, going back to historically that they all come from wolves. You're like, how did you get a pug out of it?
Right.
I
how did you get a pug?
I'm
It's
not sure.
It's pheno. It's just geneticing down for generations and thousands of years.
Correct.
Right.
And all different types, just like we all look differently,
Right.
Based on where we're from. But as far as how they are as wild animals, there's a lot of domestication that's taken place over the last, several thousand years. But, a lot of things that haven't changed about them is what they can eat, their DNA. They still, people talk to them or about them as omnivores, and they still don't have a flat tooth in their head, and they can't move their jaws side to side. So
is that what defines you as an omnivore?
Yeah.
Is a flat tooth and the ability to go like this?
A true omnivore, like a bear.
Oh.
A bear is a true omnivore. They'll have, or he, she, whatever. They have the sharp pointed canines, and then they have flat teeth.
Oh, okay. And all their teeth
And
are
cats as
jagged
well.
like sharks.
Correct.
Yeah.
And they cannot. They're built to rip and tear. So, so giving something a plant-based diet or a starch-based diet, it's something that is aberrant for their system because they're not designed necessarily to eat that.
Right. So pretty much all the dog food on the market in the grocery store is really poison for dogs. Kind of like
Yeah.
human beings.
Processed food, anything that has a shelf life, as long as that does, and it's coming from, ingredients that are degraded. They're not the best quality ingredients. That's where it's a little concerning that nutrition is the number one thing, that they're putting out with this bag of dog food that, let's say a 20-pound bag of dog food that costs, let's say $15. Or let's just even say $20. Let's use that. It's kind of hard to imagine when we know what it's like to go and buy meat at the store or anything in there that's kind of worth anything, that they're able to make this and still have a company that stays in business, as well as the grocery store making money, as well as, et cetera,
Right.
making money. How much actually goes into that bag of pet food? What good quality ingredients? And we all know, like I said, going to the grocery store, there isn't anything you can really buy.
Right. It's stay out of the middle of the grocery store, including the pet aisle, for real.
Yeah.
So what made you decide to start a dog food company?
Oh, well, I had no intentions of starting a company, but kind of like your story with Diamond, I had a bulldog puppy, and his name was Kush. I know.
Kush's birthday is on Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day, yeah.
Okay.
He was great, but he's just started getting sick, and if he gets sick, we'd go to the vet. Kind of like your story with Diamond.
Oh, all of a sudden I'm broadcasting in delay, proving that there is no time. There's no time. Okay, so if you're busy and you think you have somewhere to go, you don't. Sit down and listen.
So anyway, so he was sick, go to the vet, this infection, that infection. It started, simple things, skin infection. Not to mention he did not like kibble. So I would switch his food. We would have
And I'm sure you were buying higher quality dog food.
I was, but I mean, it really, people ask me that all the time. But I'm feeding this and it costs this much. Isn't it really good food? It's
Right.
still extruded
It's
kibble.
called marketing.
Right.
Right.
And you know, they're all, again, they're in a bag. There's you know, preservative. Yes, they start out with great ingredients, but the way the more that it's processed, it's degraded, and when it gets to your animal,
Right. Exactly. With all things.
processed food in general.
And
Sure.
processed medicine as well. The more
Yeah.
you process something to get something out of it, the less you actually have.
Right. So anyway, so Kush story. So I kept, you know, everyone kept saying, and this is anyone that has a dog with skin issues or you know, other problems, they'll say switch your food, switch your food. So I kept switching food. No one ever tells you to switch from a processed food.
Right.
That was what was the
Well,
causing
is
all the
anybody
problems.
even doing raw food? Like, honestly, like, when did you start solely raw?
This we're in our 9th year.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
And so,
I started feeding him raw, so I switched. Actually, what happened was,
like, how did you even find out about it? Because
well, because I was researching, because I was at the vet all the time with these chronic issues, and this dog was getting bathed 3 times a week. He stunk. He had, again, just festering wounds. He was just, I mean, it was foul. His coat was awful. He shed everywhere. And so I kept saying, you know, I'm on these medications. We keep adding medications, but we've not removed any symptoms. So to me, it wasn't an issue for me of cost. It was just the fact that it wasn't working. So, you know, he was barely 2 years old, and, you know, my vet, you know, his vet file was this big. And again, we hadn't removed anything. So one night, as I remember I was late, it was probably 2 a.m. This dog is just scratching himself raw after all of the medications he's on. And I said, you know what? I ruined this dog. I'm going to rebuild him like the $6 million man from the inside out. It's his immune system that was completely destroyed. So that next morning I called my vet and I said, I'm going to take him off all these medications and I'm going to put him on raw food. And fortunately, I had a great vet at the time. She's holistic, and she said, "Will you let me know how it goes?"
well, where did you even, like,
is Orange
how did
County.
you come to raw food? Like,
I just kept researching
so there was
issues,
like
and
like
there
available.
wasn't a lot.
There's not like just in the last year have you been able to find raw food?
Oh, it's
in
everywhere.
the grocery store. Just now.
Oh,
just
correct.
now.
Yes,
Not
yes.
9 years ago when you started.
Oh no! Yes,
You
it
know?
was even more so. There was a few sites about it. There were some rooms that discussed it, but it was really very rare to find anything. And there was one pet store that sold it in my area, and I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go get it. I'm going to give it a try. He doesn't eat his food anyway. We had this cabinet full of supplements and all the different food that he tried once, and he's like, eh. And people would say, your dog is, they would say, oh, he's so fat. I said, he hasn't eaten in 3 days. I call him Mary Kate. I mean, he just throws up. He refuses to eat, and he's sick, and it just was
So
devastating.
heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I switched him to raw. He went over there and sniffed it and ate the whole bowl. I was like, oh my God. He likes it. I mean, I was just thrilled he ate it. I really, and you know, they had told me, don't expect anything results for 2 months.
Wow.
Okay. And they, you know, so probably 5 days later, I'd say it was about 5, maybe even less. We had some friends over, and I had this one girlfriend, and she was really, you know, one of those germaphobes. So she would never touch the dog because he was vile, you know, back then. But I remember her sitting there. I know he was the sweetest thing. But she goes, she meant well. She loved dogs, but she just wasn't really. He was kind of gross.
Right.
So she says to me, "What did you do to Kush?" And I said, "Why?" And she goes, "He's just much less gross today." And I said, "Really?" She said, "Yeah. He usually smells a lot worse." And I said, "You know what? I haven't really been looking for these subtle signs because I was anticipating, you know, a few months to see a change." And, you know, sure enough, it was probably everything started clearing up probably 7 to 10 days then. So
Wow.
we were on the mend, and that's when I just got obsessed. I'm like, how in the world was this out there? And I spent so much time.
And money.
And he wasn't getting better. That was the
Right.
heartbreaking part, is that his quality of life, I know, had to be awful. So that's how it started, and I just could not get enough. I was like, this was it for me. So he just continued to get better. And, you know, the interesting thing.
So did you start like in your, like making food for your dog and then your friends?
Yeah, I started, when I kept him on that diet, and it was a commercial brand of raw, and it was a good brand. But what I did realize, you know, as I was doing more research in conjunction with all of this, because I was like, just like I said, I was fascinated by it. I still noticed that they had vitamin premixes. So something that I found was interesting is that in these larger produced raw food brands, they do add commercial premixes, and they add back in synthetic ingredients or supplemental ingredients, and I didn't
Filler.
really correct. Well, kind of. Sometimes what they're doing is they're just trying to, you know how you read a label and everyone's trying to add something awesome because it's so
right.
good for you.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily mean that you're able to receive it or in the levels in which it is. I just think
Right.
that probably is part of it a little
Okay.
bit, right? So I just wanted him to be on the simplest of ingredients. I felt that that was better for him versus something that was made in a laboratory. So that's how I started making his food, because I wanted everything to be from a whole food source, not from any supplement whatsoever. So, you know, I started going and making sure I was getting the highest quality muscle meat, because that's the number one thing, where all of the vitamins and minerals found in the meat. If you're purchasing a high quality muscle meat and you go back and find out what that animal's eating, you can go back and figure out, you know, what diet they're on. Is it grass fed and finished? I mean, what are they, organic, etc. And that matters because it all translates into the meat.
So let's talk about raw food in the way that, like, if I just give my dog a chicken or a half a pound of ground beef, that's not really raw food. I mean, it's raw meat.
Correct. But what you want to do with raw food is you kind of, what we do is, you know, there's all sorts of ways to do it. There's, you know, back when I started, again, probably 12 years ago, there was, what was around is the most popular was the barf diet, you know, bones and raw food. That's what they call it.
And then your dog barfs, because I've given my dog raw food like that, like hamburger, you know, without anything, just raw hamburger, and it will barf. He barfs. Or raw chicken, he barfs. Like, there needs to be a bone to
Sure, but
flesh.
they can also eat that as well. Yes, what we do, so there's different things. You do have to have a component of, and some people, they don't like the ground bone, so they'll feed a calcium supplement. So we do ground bone.
So ground bone, like, catch
Correct.
that, people, ground bone. Big difference between
Raw, yes.
than raw bone.
No, it is, no. You
It
can
is raw
feed
bone,
them
but
raw.
I mean, like, ground, as opposed to, like, here's a chicken bone.
Well, no, they can eat that fine.
Okay.
As long as it's not cooked. What you want to do, whenever you're
What about that little, like, that one little bone that sticks off the chicken leg? And the bone that freaks me out, it's like a skinny little bone. It would be the tibia if it was a human bone.
They're fine. They're really soft and pliable. Like if had I known, I would have brought something here where I could have actually shown you and broken it. So you can see just how soft they are. I mean, even cats can go through an entire chicken drumstick. So I mean, they'll grab it, they'll eat it all, they'll eat the cartilage they'll get through the bone as well. Some animals are just not that interested in getting that to that degree, but some of them really do like to chew, and it's a recreational chew as well. But as far as the food goes, what's important is that you do have your components of your meat, bone, and organs. You know, that's how you do a raw diet. So when they talk about being balanced,
so like liver, heart.
heart's fed as muscle, so your organs would be a secreting organ.
That would be like your colon.
Yeah,
so.
your sweetbreads. You can do anything hypothalamus. You can do kidneys, secreting organ, spleen, and then liver's 5% of that. And that's what we do is called a prey model raw. But there's all various ways of doing it, as you well know. There's different ways. There's frank and prey model plus, barf. Some people do with the vegetation in there as well. Plants and vegetables and fruit. That's all different variations to raw diets now, where it used to just kind of be, and there's a lot of things where people, as far as feeding them what you're doing with just giving them a piece of chicken and having them throw up, that depends on what happened. Did he eat first? Did he eat too quickly? Because usually if they throw up immediately afterward, it hit the stomach too quickly, or they're full because perhaps they'd already eaten dinner. So sometimes that's when, we have these really eaters, they eat with a lot of enthusiasm. So I always tell, their owners want to slow them down a little bit, obviously. So, you add a little water, you can smash it down. So they have to work a little harder. So they're not just, inhaling the whole
Yeah, I think
thing.
he was just inhaling the ground beef. So, but you're talking about muscle meat. So muscle meat and ground beef are not necessarily, they're both the same? Okay.
Well,
so what do you mean by muscle meat? Because I think that every muscle is meat.
Well, yeah. You're right, as long as it's not an organ. So muscle meat from an animal.
Okay.
So
all right.
when I say muscle, ground beef is, a lot of raw feeders, don't go out and buy ground beef just because they don't know really where it comes from. So we tell people that are going to the store, I always tell them, select a good cut of meat that has marbling of fat in there, because fat is very important for animals. They're fed quite differently. They use them for energy, whereas they're using protein and fat for energy, whereas we're using mostly, carbohydrates, etc. And so fat is important. So everyone says they take it, again, when they start feeding raw, they're boneless, skinless. And I said, oh, no, bones and skin and fat. And they're like, really? Yeah.
We had a rescue dog that was pregnant that had been like basically starved, and I was really sad. Yeah, she was super skinny and about, I don't know, 3 weeks out from giving birth, and I gave her a chicken a day. I just gave her a whole chicken every single day, and she had 8 super healthy puppies. And I really think it's because I gave her an entire chicken a day.
I think so. I mean,
You
when
know,
you
'cause
feed
it
them
brought her-
simple foods.
Yeah, like I just gave her, like, she was really underweight, and by the time I knew that she wasn't
needed
going to
extra
survive the
calories,
birth. The puppies were going to be really, and this is Thor's mom.
She wasn't going to have any milk.
She wasn't going to have anything, right?
Sure.
Yeah, so I was just like, a chicken a day. And she thought she had died and gone to heaven. So you have some of your products here, and some of them are dry and some of them are cold. So
Yes.
let's kind of, you know, like, because when people think raw, they think, oh, I have to have all this, you know, raw meat around my house.
Right.
And it's going to be really expensive
Right.
to feed raw. So can you share some of your
Sure.
raw products that you got and kind
Some
of
these,
price point? And
well, it all depends on the meat. So we probably have, from a variety standpoint, we have everything from chicken, just regular chicken. We have organic chicken. We have duck, turkey, grass-fed and finished beef, lamb, venison, goat, quail.
wow, damn. Like I wanted, like
rabbit.
I asked earlier, so like if I have too much company and I run out of like what I'm barbecuing, can I feed my guests what you're going to pull out of that bag?
Well, no, because, well, you can feed some of this, just not the food, because it is called what's denatured. When you're making pet food, you have to call it's denatured in some way. And what it is, in this respect, how it's denatured is with ground bone. So the bone is in here.
Oh.
It's all contained in here. So this is, yes, not for human consumption.
Because humans can't eat bones?
Correct. We don't digest them as well. Well, actually, though, somebody did tell me, she was from Somalia. She said, we do eat bones. So she goes, I can eat it.
What's that stuff that everyone's on right now? That
Oh, the
bone
collagen.
broth.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the collagen.
Yeah, I drink
Yeah.
that. We make it.
So honestly, the FDA just has to have a definitive difference.
Well,
between...
we are actually licensed by the California Department of Food and Agriculture.
And how was that? Was that like an impossible thing to get? Like, did
no,
you?
it's
I've been to your place. You have a commercial kitchen.
yes.
What, you get like sides of beef from butchers? Is that what you do?
No. I actually, all different places where our meat comes from. I just, one of the things that we do is what's important to me is the integrity of the products. And meat is number one for me. That's the most important job, is that we have the highest quality ingredients that we can get to put in this food. So from sourcing, like I buy from all different places for different reasons, whether they pasture raised, that's ideal, free range.
But do you get your meat like in sides? Do you get your
No.
animal like quarters or?
No, because there's some good cuts of meat, so we don't want to put that price point on there for a human grade. They don't care if they have a filet mignon, plus the fact there's not enough fat in that one. We actually want to use a nice cut, like a roast.
Like a chuck roast.
Sure. They don't care if it's tough.
Right.
Doesn't
Right.
matter
You want
to
the
them.
lower cut of meat because it's higher in fat and.
Yeah,
closer
but
to
I
the
mean, we
bone?
buy actually, but we buy at 80-20. So also we keep the percentages. In some cases, over the years, people have wanted to sell us, more fat because they think it's cheaper. That's not what we're going for. We're not going for cheaper. We're going for what's best for the
I have
animal.
those people in my business who want to help me by cutting corners, and I'm like, no, that's not the business model.
I'm not looking for
Thank
sale
you.
meat. But so anyway, as far as muscle meat, like I said, so we get some of our meat comes from, if it's the duck, this is, what's this one? Lamb. This is grass-fed and finished lamb. So we start out with,
I want to get really. Where do I go? Right here?
There we are.
Can you see it? Ooh, there we go. Let me pull it back a little bit. Can you see it right there? Yeah, that looks good.
Oh, this is a good
And then I
one,
want to
too.
show you the inside. Meat and bone, yeah. I know if my dog was here right now, I'd be on the floor getting completely attacked for this.
Here's a good one too, because you can see all the nice heart meat on the
Ooh.
top, all the organ. This is pork.
Pork.
Yeah, I'm a
Yum.
big fan. It's a novel protein. It's excellent.
Pork is a novel protein. I feel like that should be like on a menu.
Well, novel
Pork,
protein
the novel
for-
protein. Like why is it?
Dogs. Well, nobody's. Well,
Oh, because people don't really feed their dog porks, right? Because the pig is bad. No.
Well, pigs
'Cause
were
if you have a
bad for
Muslim
all
dog,
of us.
it's not gonna eat
well,
this, or a
that's
Jewish
one
dog.
thing. But back in the 70s, or even before the 70s, where they changed the way that they're able to feed them. So now they're vegetarian fed. Before they used to feed them garbage. If you
Oh, that's so sad. Pigs are so cool.
I know.
Pigs are the coolest animals. And aren't we in the year of the pig? Isn't it a pig year?
Yeah,
So we
it
really
is.
want to honor the pig. Okay, this is pork loin, pork heart, pork ribs, pork liver, and pork kidney. I love that.
Yeah, it's
That's
nice.
great. Yeah, and so this is 8 ounces.
No, this one's 16.
16. Okay, all right. That's how you do it. Okay, so it's 16 ounces. So I got a 100-pound pit bull and
Okay,
a
so you probably wouldn't buy this
12-pound
size.
pug.
Okay, so you
Okay.
would buy a larger size. But basically, a lot of
Is
it
that
has
one
to do with
serving, basically?
No, the way that we process our food is made to order, so we don't have a huge amount. I mean, we still do everything by hand. I mean,
Okay.
we
Wow.
try to keep it as close to its naturally occurring state as possible, which means there's not a lot of processing done. So some people that feed raw, they like the patties because they're all weighed out and that they buy from different companies, which is great, and it's easier for them. But for us, we honestly want to, once it's all ground, it's ground 3 times and it's mixed and everything is, you can, again, and the biggest batch we have is 50 pounds. So it's small. And once from that, then it's packaged in the different sizes. We have four sizes. So 8 ounce, 16 ounce, 32 ounce, and 80 ounce, which is the 5-pounder. But everything in our food will stay fresh in your refrigerator thawed for 7 to 10 days, where other ones, they kind of go bad and get a little mushy because they're the patties, and when you thaw the patties out, they kind of end up
the water.
thawing together.
Right.
So this doesn't. You just kind of get the myoglobin in there and you kind of stir it all together. But
I like that word, myoglobin.
isn't that a good one? It's pretty, too. It's nice and red. So when you
We have
bring this home,
myoglobin as well.
when you bring this home and you see it after you thaw it, you're going to see it all in there. You're going to see all the juice, and you're going to stir it back up and give it back to them.
Nice,
delicious.
nice. But so how much would I feed my 12-pound pug as opposed to my 100-pound pit bull?
Well, that has to do with, again, it has to do with weight. I always take into consideration breed, activity level. So your pug is, generally the rule of thumb for feeding raw for a dog that's not a puppy, not a lactating mother, not a pregnant mother, not a nursing mother, lactating, nursing, same thing, sorry. And you're going to do it based on their weight, and it's 2 to 3% of their body weight.
Okay.
So now that's how I start, but I always tell people I start on the lower end, especially if you're going from a diet that's on a commercial diet. Sometimes this is very heavy. It's rich food. It's dense. So, it's a little different on the stomach. So we go on the lower end there, and then from there, depending on where they're landing, if you feel like they're gaining weight, if you feel like they're getting too thin, they're always going to act like they're hungry, or that's what we get a lot. But they're so hungry. I'm like, yeah, but I eat dessert after I've eaten 4 courses.
My dog is starving. And my dog needs to eat every single second of the day.
Perfect.
And
We
every
can take care
time,
of that.
like, seriously, it's ridiculous. This dog is ridiculous.
They're just foodies. They just have something
They
to
are,
do. It's
yeah,
exciting.
Yeah, everybody who's a dog this lifetime was a big, fatso in, some kind of, a tent or something, like some big, giant Jabba the Hutt character.
But my dogs, so
Or
I have
Star.
2 dogs that are 22 pounds, and they're both young and they're very active. So technically, they would not be eating what they really eat. My dogs eat, they'll eat almost 16 ounces a day. That's a lot for them. They shouldn't eat that much, just based on their weight and size. But again, active dogs or dogs that are a little anxiety, a lot of working dogs, they burn through it through food faster because they have high anxiety. So we have, for example, let's use my neighbor's dog. She has a 140-pound Mastiff, and she has an 80-pound Lab. The Mastiff is younger than the Lab, but they eat the same exact amount, and nobody gains weight.
Sorry. Wow.
Because Walter's a little bit more, for his body. So, they're all a little bit different. So
Right.
that's why I kind of tell people, try it on with this, using this scale at first, but this is not hard and fast. Every dog's different. You don't know if they're going to break that rule, and you don't want to be sticking to
And
that.
how do you know, because they are foodies and they're always starving and they're always in your face with, let me have a piece. How do you know?
That's enough food?
Yeah, how do you know?
Well, basically, I just kind of do it on weight. If you feel like you've given them, the appropriate amount of food all day, plus some other things, I always tell people also throw in a happy hour snack. Whether it be a recreational bone, if you've got puppies.
Oh, let's see some of the bones that you got in there.
So here's some of the fun bones. But some of the puppies, like we do, I add raw goat's milk, bone broth, all of these fun things just for extra food because they like to keep eating and they're hungry. So that's for, different things. But, happy hour is a good way also to extend dinner for dogs that, if you feed them
Happy
at
hour is
5.
a good way for me to extend dinner as well. I'm very happy with happy hour.
I love grabbing, a glass of wine and then I go ahead and get the bones out for the dogs and they can go out in the backyard. Mine tend to.
I feel like I want to just put this one on the grill, man. These look
are
like
amazing.
Like I'm gonna go up on the camera again so y'all can see.
Oh, here's a really nice one.
Look at these gorgeous bones. These are like seriously. There's my boobs. No, here's my cuts of meat. Yeah, look at them. That's you're gonna barbecue for the dog.
But we keep the meat on there by design. So these right here, so why we cut these a certain size is because you have the marrow in the back. So when you're feeding a bone, what you want to think about when you get the ones from the butchers that do not have any meat on them, first of all, you're not encouraging them to use all of their teeth to chew on the bone. That's number one. Second of all, it's a weight-bearing bone typically that's a marrow bone. So that being said, you're encouraging them to chew on something that they can't possibly get through. So you're wearing your teeth down, perhaps cracking a tooth. So we make sure we keep a lot of meat on the bone, that they're only cut a certain thickness. This is important is because, again, they're going to eat all this lovely meat. They're going to get their little bit of marrow. They're going to be good to go versus starting off with something that has no meat on it. So even the ribs as well. And some of the more enthusiastic chewers, as I said before, they'll go ahead and eat this entire thing. Okay, there's marrow inside. They'll break it, crack it.
They'll eat my dog would eat the entire thing.
And that's fine, and that's some dogs, but I mean, if you know your dog's not going to do it, you don't
My
waste it out.
pug would eat the entire thing.
Oh, well,
For real.
But this is hard cartilage. This is trachea. So this is grass-fed and finished trachea. So what's important about feeding hard cartilage items is
You
that
can see through it.
these are well, they come in this big, huge thing. I should have brought the whole one. But this is made up of 5% glucosamine in hard cartilage.
Oh, that's awesome.
In a whole food source. So this is why we do a lot of this for dogs that
So
have
all you
joint
people
issues.
with bone and joint pain, here you just get some trachea, some beef trachea. Just ask your butcher. You can't get this at the butcher, can you?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
No, you can't.
Just put your bones
these
away.
are, so these are fun. So these are.
Yeah, they'd be super fun if you were a dog, for real. Like, that's great.
Yeah,
well,
so
that's,
I do that for happy hour, and then afterward I let it sit for a little while because they've had some food, and then I can push their dinner back, so therefore they're not waking up starving first thing in the morning. Because generally, sometimes you have an issue where you have a dog that has an empty stomach, but that's because their dinner's at 5 and then they don't eat breakfast till 8. So, that happens.
So, like, some people think they should feed their dog once a day. You obviously don't think so.
Some dogs, if they want to eat once a day, that's fine. I mean, or they want to feed them. I always feed twice a day just because I think that that's a long time to go without food in your stomach. But there's also people that believe in fasting their dogs, to let the immune system go back and work on.
Do you think that that's, like, appropriate to fast your dog? Or do you think, like, I think a lot of times human beings put their stuff on their animals.
Like anthropomorphic?
Yeah, like super anthropomorphic, for sure, especially with animals.
I
don't
see a
think
lot
my
more
dog
of that
needs to. I'm sure you do. You make dog food, so I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Like the level of neuroses. Sorry, pet owners. I hate to like be harsh on you right now, but come on, man. I mean, like here's the deal. Dogs are in organic balance. They sit. They sit in a place where they're balance, harmony, resonance, and alignment. They're here for us. They're our guardians and our caretakers. So here we come and we're like, Buffy needs to, Buffy can't walk. Buffy can only be in my bag,
Or a stroller.
Or a stroller, yeah. It's a dog, man. And I tell people with medicine that, your dog knows what it needs. Like you can always dose down with the dog because animals don't have, when I worked with horses, I really, really found this out. The human being that owns the animal puts so much more on the animal than the animal itself has. And if you just allow the animal, which is organically homeopathy, like just in a homeopathic state, it will respond a lot better to medicines and good nutrition like your dog Kush. Like 7 to 10 days, you were bam, new dog, because Kush came into balance on Kush's self. Right? You, the human, you helped it get what it needed, and once he had what he needed, he was good.
No, I agree with that. And on that topic, I feel like what I try to do is tell people more so simplify. Don't keep adding.
Right.
Take things away and simplify. you're feeding, you know, take into consideration you're feeding this dog, like you said, you're taking care
Right.
of this animal. And so, you know, the fasting, there is something to be said, because then you get the people that are like, well, in nature, they don't eat every day. They don't eat balanced every day. So they'll balance their diet on a week basis, or they fast them so
But they're not in nature. See, this is the thing is they've been domesticated for 10,000 years, you know? Like I've actually had a wolf as a pet. She was a wolf husky, and and I've also had a coyote named Flo that just, I know, it was just like, it was in Montana, and this dog would walk in circles. Like she would just go in circles, and then she would go in figure eights because she had been terrorized because she was a coyote but raised as a dog. And then we rescued her because she's a wild animal. She truly is a wild animal. But then, you know, my dog, my lab, was like, why is she walking in circles? You know, like he was super easy to deal with because he was like, you know, a domesticated lab. And my wild coyote was like walking in circles because she was so stressed out about so many things because she's a coyote.
Right.
And had no business to be in a house.
Wow. That's pretty cool, though.
So we eventually, I'm just going to finish my Cody story. We had her for 5 years, and we let her go. Like we kept training her and getting her to the point where so we would actually get rabbits and let her kill rabbits and chickens. So when she got out into the wild, she could do exactly that.
So there's
survive.
that do it as well. Yes. I
Yeah,
agree.
and then we finally let her go. So
Aw.
I hope Flo
Did
is
she
good.
come back?
We moved.
Oh.
So, but we with intention let her go. We didn't just take her
Right.
to the wild after we fed her canned dog food for 5 years and said, good luck,
Good luck."
Flo. You know, we knew we were going to let her go because she was a wild animal, and that's why we got her. Because I actually was like, why do you have a coyote? Let me take the coyote. And they were like, oh, okay. You know, so I rescued the coyote from some, you know, people who thought they were doing a good thing by keeping a wild animal. So you have some other products over here
Oh,
that
yeah.
are dry. So not everything from Solely Raw goes into the freezer.
No,
Some of it seems to stay in the pantry.
Well,
and
I was not a snack feeder. Like I was not a treat feeder. I had a bulldog.
you don't have small dogs.
Well, no, I had a bulldog that would, again, constantly. First of all, he wasn't a big eater, but he wasn't. You know, generally you're kind of watch what they're doing. You don't want to get them to a point where they're so heavy. You know, when he went on raw, he weighed 54 pounds. And that was all the supplements, and this was, like I said, he'd skipped a lot of meals, etc. When the first month on raw, he was down to 45 pounds, and he was just lean and mean, and he was eating 3 times what he'd ever eaten. It was so cool. So, but everyone kept asking me to make treats, and for me,
They
I
ask
didn't
me to
want,
make treats all the time.
I bet they do. I didn't want to have anything cooked, so it really was hard for me. I focused on this, and in the beginning, you know, I was doing it all myself, so that was like, oh, okay, I'll get.
The
let me get
story
on
of an
this.
entrepreneur, 20 hours a day, right?
yeah,
Yeah, seriously. I'm
And they
doing it
think
all
they
myself.
think we're living like, oh, you get to do whatever you want. You get to get off early and go on vacation. I'm like, I don't know what you're.
There's no such thing as vacation.
No.
It's a working vacation.
So what happened was the more that I thought about this process, and something that I did too when I started researching about it, I really went back in time versus doing all the, you know, I took what was available at this point, but I was going back and when they used to do things a little differently. You know, when animals lived a lot longer, they were in a little bit better shape than they are now. So I went back and did that to figure out what they were doing back then and how they fed them. And kind of came up with a lot of stuff. But one thing was how they dried the meat. They would air dry it. They would hang it outside. It was some cowboy, I don't know, some manual I found. I don't know. It was really fascinating. But anyway, so I thought, well, we certainly can't do that. It's food. So what I did is we created this. I had this idea in my mind. If we can just circulate the air to remove the moisture. So once
like a smokehouse,
right?
Kind of, yeah.
When the moisture was, but it was ambient temperature. So even you know at any given
So it took
time.
for 8 years to get through something to dry at ambient temperature. Like, didn't that take like an exceptionally long time?
No. So actually, interestingly enough, certain things take longer to dry. Like for example, the mussels, they're all full of water.
Okay, these have been tripping me out the whole time we're sitting there. I'm like, what
they cool?
exactly are those?
I'll tell you about these. But anyway, so that whole method. So we started, and I just would take the same food that we would get. And like, for example, the whole ducks. So we take the ducks and we cut the duck breasts out, and then we freeze them, and then we slice them, and then they go on trays and they go into this shack, the tent. Well, we call it the shack, but this tent. So then you have different types of things drying them. It's all different levels, but yeah, it's kind of a cool process. But anyway, it comes out. But the great thing about it is that it doesn't. You're not removing the nutrient value of the proteins or fish, if you will, because you're not cooking it. And also you can rehydrate these, and there's not a choking hazard. So for example, if your dog eats this entire thing and wants to choke, you know, like getting a chip in your throat, like a tortilla chip, once the saliva hits it, it softens up. So, you know, you can actually put these in water. So we have dogs that are, you know, 17, 18. They'll rehydrate these and give them to them for food.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. But then I started, you know, products kind of came around. You know, back then we just had a few at a time. Now we have, I don't know how many we have, like 20 maybe. But this particular product was born out of necessity. We had one of my family members' dogs. She had 2 torn ACLs, and so she had, you know, they wanted to do the surgery, but they weren't, you know, comfortable with doing that surgery so invasive. So I started, you know, really researching. I had a lot of time on my hands. I didn't have a lot of customers back then. I had a lot of time and a lot of dogs that I got to do all of this fun R&D with, and trying bones on this one and what's this one eating. So it was cool. So one thing as I found is greenlet mussels. So this is the only, you know, there's other mussels that have, you know, high value as well, different properties that are important and intrinsic to health. But one thing about the greenlet mussels, they're a natural anti-inflammatory. And so these specifically help with arthritis or inflammation in general, joint issues. And you don't need a lot of them. It was really just every day. I just tell people, this is not a treat. This is not what you buy to hand out to them all the time. This is something that you give them, you know, maximum, even if it's a large dog. 2 a day is fine. Unless you have a condition, then we go up to 4 for like a month. But yeah, these take a little bit longer to dry, just because they're full of water when we pop them out of the shells.
I feel like it's a fish in a bag. And they just are bringing,
smells just like the ocean.
They just remind me of feminine anatomy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
In a bag. Wow. Nice. These are great. So super awesome for older dogs, you know. Way better. So many people reach out to me about arthritis and
That's excellent. Yeah, definitely
things like
for
that. So
cannabis,
this is like, yeah, arthritis is great, but cannabis is great for doggy arthritis and stuff. But nutrition is. I always like to say that cannabis is the nutrition is the driver. You know, it's what really drives the car, and like the cannabis is like the omniscient kind of leather seating, right? You're gonna have a better experience as you like drive in with a supplement,
right?
You know, like a cannabis CBD for your dog. But if you don't have great nutrition, you're not gonna that product's not gonna do anything for you.
Right, because then you're at that point in time, you're adding something, and you're still continuing to put
more
the thing
fishes.
in that's
There's more fish over there.
These are just really fun. Cats love these too, but these are kind of a fun training because these break. So you know, I tell people you know, these bags of treats, these start out as 2 pounds of meat. Okay, so it's not, you know, they are a dense treat as well. So you know, these are not something you just dole out. I mean, so. Those are pretty fun.
These are cool. These are grunion, aren't they?
No, these are anchovies.
Okay.
So we have larger. We do frozen anchovies, larger size sardines. It's, you know, things of that nature. But these are actually a fun.
So what
dry.
happens if like your stoner partner like sees these and they're making pizza and they're like, oh yeah, dude, let's put some anchovies on it.
I will tell you that people have eaten these. I've had clients that have eaten every single one of these, even the mussels.
I would so totally eat these if I was like in the car in traffic and hungry. I'd be like,
yeah,
smells like a girl. What's it taste like?
You know, the only time I have to eat well, actually it was breakfast, because venison and beef, when they dry, they kind of look the same. So I was finding them in the morning that I'm like, I don't know which is which. When they would slice it and put it in the shack at night, I'd come in to move it. And I'm like, I'm going to have to try them. I have to eat them. So that's for breakfast. Venison for breakfast for me.
Wow, well that's cool. I mean, that's just dried meats. And if I was doing that in my studio, I would not be here. I'd be paced on the floor. I'd still be like, I don't know what was in that pot, but I'm still here. It was strong. That's all I would be able to say about that, for real. So, where are you at? Like, how do we find Solely Raw? Like, what if I live in Idaho? Can I?
Well, you know, honestly, there's a lot of other good companies.
Or?
Yeah, but we ship to some states, but you know, there's a lot of, because Raw's come so far since when I started. Now there's great companies everywhere. And I usually suggest to people,
Are you in any stores in San Diego?
Yeah,
or
yes, we are.
Like where?
We are in my second retailer we ever had, and I love her, Hiromi. She owns K9 to 5, and they're down on Morena Boulevard. Where's another one we're in San Diego? Noah's, PB. Do you know where Noah's is?
We know Noah's, yeah.
Noah's. San Diego, who else? Or, you think I would know this.
Well,
Like
no, actually,
downtown
because
San
you're the
Diego.
business owner, so you would know nothing about where your products are.
Well,
Me neither.
actually, I do. It's not that we love our retailers, but it's more so.
Are you more client direct?
Yes.
So if
That's my
I am in Iowa and will you ship to me if I reach out to you and say
I'll help you
I have
out.
a cow?
If you're within our shipping area for for the frozen products, we'll help you.
Because that's
we can
part of
ship
it is
to
that
you.
you're shipping fresh frozen, so there's only a certain amount of zone that
Like
you
again,
can.
2 days I'm comfortable with. Other than that, yeah, no, you can get it from some. I mean, again, I'll help them. I mean, even if they call in and they're not in my, we try to help them and suggest there's great companies out there and they're all over, so they can find something local, and that way they're not spending money on shipping. Shipping raw frozen products, it's not, it's like
It's not
buying
cheap.
Omaha steaks,
Exactly,
right?
Exactly, yeah.
So that being said, I usually try and tell them, spend the money on raw food. Don't spend it on shipping.
Do you do any education on your websites or at your place? Like,
Yeah, I mean,
because I just learned so much that, if I knew how to make my own raw food, that might be a valuable
Sure,
lesson
it
for
is.
me. Because I was literally giving my poor dog like ground beef and Bureau's yeast. I'm like, and some mixed vegetables, right? And like, here, dog, here's your raw food. And I was like, oh, maybe not. And
Yeah, there's so much out there for raw food as far as like guidelines, and they'll help you out.
Well, okay, and so now in like Petco and stuff, there's a raw food aisle, but it's done by like Purina. So is it, just because it's in the refrigerated case?
Well, the refrigerated one is a little different, only because it has a 6-month shelf life. I think maybe something close to that, and it's refrigerated. So I think we all know that
6 months on the shelf is not, yeah.
probably maybe not the one I'd want to
So
feed.
what would be
That's
some
just mine.
guidelines I don't know
just
anybody
read
raw
your-
around me? Just like go on the internet or like,
Yeah,
what am I looking for in a product? Just
Well,
the simplest
first of
amount
all,
of
I would
ingredients?
go to your local pet store. There's some of the great pet stores that we have. Another one that we have that carries a ton of our products in Orange County is Furley's, but they are in Lake Forest. But what I'm going to tell you about these guys, they have, all sorts of products and, I don't know, 10 different raw brands. But what they come in and they find out what the pet owner's looking for, why do they want to switch food? So this is where I'm saying, probably the first place to start is somewhere they're comfortable shopping. So that being said, they'll help them with their specific animal. People online will help you as well, but in the feeding communities or some of the ones online, it's a little harder to get straight. You get kind of a lot of advice, and maybe not all specific for your dog, and maybe not always helpful.
Right.
So that's where I suggest people, there are great educated small pet stores that do know what they're talking about, and they'll say, specifically, flip your ingredient panel over, something that that your dog can't have, or something that it's important to you that is not in this particular food because it's not what you think is best for your dog. So it just depends. You want to do a DIY? There's DIY websites on how to do it yourself. Get a grinder. Here's how you start. These are your percentages. Do you want to do this particular type of raw, or how do you want to do it? Do you want to have a cooked diet? Cooked diet, you're still picking the ingredients, which is far better than something that comes in a bag. Mm-hmm. So that being said, go find a good
Another
cookbook.
question. Okay, so I'm a really busy person, and I just don't have time to like make raw food for my dog.
Okay.
Okay, so
You can buy it online.
Okay.
From most companies, they're whether they're a large company and they sell online, something, they sell it everywhere. But it's
Right.
shipping that's going to get you. That's why I say just go to your local store. Typically, you'll be able to pick it
Right,
up
so
there.
you don't have
It's
to
everywhere
make
now.
it. Like somebody doesn't have to
No.
make it, and they don't have to. Okay, and what about like? So I've seen in pet stores now. There's a whole bunch of like grain-free foods. Is that like just a buzzword, like hemp?
Well, no. Well, grain-free comes back in the day. Well, not back in the day, but this was a while ago where they realized, just when you're storing certain items, just how it's stored, you get certain things like mycotoxins, aflatoxins, pardon me, they're cancer-causing. And it's just happens when you're storing certain foods, grains, peanuts, etc., things like that. So that being said, that was carrying over into pet food. So why they made that huge switch is, those things, and again, they're cancer causing. We're all trying to get away from that. So then they went to grain free. But what they did with the grain, they didn't add more meat. What they did is they replaced it all with starches. So potatoes, peas, rice.
Rice is a grain.
Yeah, with the starch, but does that go both ways?
I guess maybe. Yeah.
Corn, just the corn grain. But God, I don't even know. Potatoes, it's sweet potatoes. Let me think of the other ones.
So I didn't think about that. So that's basically when it says grain free, it's just starch rich.
Correct.
So
and
right,
where
'cause
that's
it's like,
not.
it's like salmon and peas, right? So it's like salmon and peas.
Or beans, things like that. I don't even know. Everyone says, don't you know? I said, I don't know. I don't read. I'm not
right,
really
it's not,
out there.
I don't go looking around at other people's products and being like, well, what are they doing? I don't care.
I just, but as far as where that caused a problem is because, going back and adding starches, these are for people saying it's grain free. So my dog had allergies, so I'm going to grain free. Well, in some cases, starches make them itch more. And then you have a whole litany of problems with just going with all these starchy things. So for example, you've got, you still have that huge glycemic load with your starches, all sugar, and then you have, processing issues just because it's heavily laden with those things. You're going to have those one after another in there, so you're mostly feeding a starch-based food. And then peas, for example, they have lectin in it, so that'll cause some GI issues and cause malabsorption issues. So all of the things that you're putting into your dog perhaps may not be actually getting into them because you're having a secondary issue because of the ingredients in that food. So then you're going to fix that one problem by adding something but not removing what the origin of what may be causing that. So that's kind of some of the things that we see is a lot of people getting back to the adding versus taking away instead of looking at what might be the issue.
Do you have a question?
Oh, yeah. So we had a question in terms of raw food. You can return to what you're saying. But in terms of raw food, is it best when you have like a sick dog and you're treating the sick dog, or even if you have a perfectly healthy dog, to transition them to raw diet?
Well, it depends on the sickness. I mean, so for example, if your dog is going through chemo, okay, well, one of the things that vet would say, and this is not, vets don't really high five you for feeding raw, but specifically when you're immunocompromised, they're cautious about that and they'll suggest that you cook it. So it would depend on what the sickness is. Is the dog, vomiting? Is it old? Is it a puppy? I mean, just would depend on what it was. So a lot of cases, I like to get them to a place where they're kind of, like I said, how sick are they? Have they not eaten? They're just getting out of the hospital. That's a little different because you want to kind of still keep it pretty simple for them because they're not doing well. It's kind of like when we're sick. What do you want? Chicken soup, something like that.
So if
Something
I
bland.
give my dog a hamburger as opposed to raw meat, is it the same for my dog? Like a hamburger that like I'm cooking on the grill and I drop one down?
Well, it's not the same because again, when you're going back to baking raw food, there's again a little bit more to it. But as far as an addition to it and cooking it, yes, you are taking away some of the nutrients, just like they say for anything, because cooking does destroy some of it, and that's okay. But I feel like if you're doing that, it's still better than something that you're going to get in a bag. Because you're still selecting their food. So again, there's a lot of good cooking for your animals. There's cookbooks all over, from very
Cooking for your pooch.
Really.
I think that we should put that on Happy Dog. I do. I think that we should definitely have a little doggy cookbook.
I think it's great.
I think it's super great. Any bad? Like, has any dog been, have you had any negative experiences of the dog eating raw and it getting worse or having some other issue?
We actually haven't.
That's so awesome. I love that.
A few times we have dogs that get into other things, so it's not necessarily their raw food, but it's dogs that eat everything. Like one of my dogs, he eats everything in the yard. So in order to work with that, I have to give him extra hard cartilage because he'll constantly have a loose stool, which is the opposite of what raw food is. So when you switch your dog, all of us that are on a commercial diet, you're going out and taking your dog for a walk for they can do their business 3 times a day, 2 or 3. Raw dogs typically don't go once a day, sometimes twice, but it's significantly smaller because everything they're eating, their body's able to process.
They're processing,
and
exactly.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's a great bonus. We have another question.
I have a question.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah. Carrie's asking the question.
As far as transitioning your dog from say, can I go home right now and just decide to feed my dog raw, or would I have
have to like slowly transition it, like you know when you switch
Right.
foods?
That's usually when you're going from one commercial brand to another commercial brand. That's why they tell you you're going to have diarrhea or some upset stomach, because what you're doing, so your dog got used to this bag of food that you fed him, all of the ways that they process it, the preservatives, the ingredients, you're going to switch to a whole new group. So that's where you're going to have some issues. Stomach upset, etc., just because this is a whole new group of things that they're not used to. But if you're a raw, if you're switching, you know, some people, when depending on the dog or your comfort level, I switch cold turkey. Well, first of all, my first dog, Kush, just wouldn't eat the other food, so I didn't have. That's just all he ate. The other dogs, as soon as they came in, I just switch them cold turkey. But you don't have a loose stool with raw typically, because what happens, you have bone in the food, and it actually hardens their stool, usually within 24 to 48 hours. So it's actually lovely. And a lot of clients of mine, they call me and they say, my dog's constipated. And I'm like, why? Well, they haven't gone to the bathroom. But once I said, that's all they have to go. And
Oh
I'm
my
like, do
goodness.
they look like they're in distress? No. I'm like, okay. We usually
Okay.
tell them that when they leave, you know, but
Right.
we have had a few that they've picked it up and they haven't come through us. And we're like, you know, just don't worry. First of all, they also don't drink as much water because they're not trying to get all the kibble break down. So they don't drink as much water because there's about 70% moisture in raw food. So that's one of the ones that we see as well. But, you know, a lot of people transition over, you know, I tell people, don't feel like you're in a hurry. You don't have to do, you know, what other people do. But, you know, if you want to add some to their diet tonight, just make sure you remove the appropriate amount of the current food that they're on, you know, so they're not getting too much food as well. But, you know, that's just kind of everybody's comfort level. There's all different ways you can transition. There'll be, you know, lists of ways to do it. And like I said, I usually tell them, you know, plan to be fully on raw in like 3 days. That's like the slow method for us. But that, again, my method isn't everybody else's method. Like I said, mine's like an hour after they get to my house is when they go on raw.
So how do people find you? For the
Website, usually we're
solelyraw.com?
solely
Is that-
raw. Yeah.
And anything else you want to share with us about, you know, like how you 9 years in?
I know, it's
You
crazy.
you also do a cannabis oil for some people that you like, you know, for your special people, don't you? Or
No,
Not so much?
Not so much.
no, but you have
We
treated
actually
your
we
dogs
really
or-
really yes, we had a lot of over the years we've done I started how I got involved, which is funny that my dog's name was Kush, because I had no idea that I would be so involved with you know, using cannabis for animals, and you know, myself for insomnia, etc. But I didn't know about it. But King Harvest is one of good friends of ours, clients. They have 2 beautiful Rottweilers. They kind of started on the oils and how it worked for animals, and so that's kind of how I got my feet wet. And I just was absolutely astonished by how remarkable the changes were for a lot of these animals. So that's kind of how it started several years ago, and I think that's when I first met you.
Yeah, that's when we first met. Like that was so long ago at this point. It was like what, 4 years ago, something like that?
I don't know, but it was so interesting. I'm so happy that you're doing it now.
Because I wasn't doing a dog product when I first met you. We were just
You
beginning.
were just starting with
we
the
were
blister
just
packs, I think, right?
starting to figure out how to treat a dog. That's how you and I met. Was like our mutual friend was like, oh well, Lisa can maybe help you out with dosing, because you know I know how to dose people, but dosing animals is the same but different. You know, it's the same but different. So I was looking for education, and you know I got directed to you, and it was so exciting when I met you and learning about raw food, and you know and how you were using, how both together really. You want to avoid vet bills? I mean, like seriously, you want to avoid vet bills? Here you go, raw food and you know, CBD oil. That's it. It's super simple, people. You know, like you keep saying, take away. You know, we get, like as Americans especially, like Western culture, add. Yeah, and
Oh,
really,
you have this? You need this.
yeah, you need
Oh,
this.
then go get this.
People will call me, you know, human beings who are living with, you know, cancer and stuff. I'm taking A, B, C, D, F, G, Q, X, and I'm like, whoa, you don't know if any of that's working because you're taking so many things
right.
that you're actually creating like a toxic storm inside of yourself. So you're counteracting everything. So keep it simple. Like I love that. KISS. Keep it simple, sweetie. You know, like really clean water, good food, clear, clean cannabis oil for sure.
You know, and also I'm going to say some of the things that we've used, and I don't know if you know, do this as well with your with Happy Dog, but a lot of people come in us with dogs that have anxiety. So whether it be separation anxiety, whether it be anxiety when they have guests over, when they can't, go to be around other
CBD
dogs.
is very
so
helpful.
that is something that we find, a lot of they are using that as well. Before, or the dog trainers, and they want to get educated in this as well.
Right,
So I mean, I think it's
so any dog trainers out
fantastic.
there who want to have a little education, we'd love to visit with you. Yeah, CBD is great for anxiety, and I think that this and some CBD oil for your older dog, that's the ticket, man.
Well, it's funny, is because getting back to the time frame, I'm really, I kind of always err on the very cautious side. So I tell people, this one works. Bone broth is amazing. That works faster. So if you've got an older dog and you just want to give them some relief and a little bit.
So just pour some bone broth in their water bowl and let them drink it?
I put it on their food.
On their food, yeah.
I drink it myself out of the bottle. But I mean, the same stuff I make for them, I drink. But I mean, I load it up with grass-fed and finished tendons and all of the good joint bones and everything where you're getting all of that hydrolyzed collagen, the glycosamine and glycans. It's all a food-based, glucosamine, hyaluronic acid, chondroitin, all of the things that you're getting in a supplement form. And now you're putting it in a food source
form. Right,
and something
exactly.
that's simplified for their bodies. This is where you have
and this when it
better,
comes like this as opposed to like the powder, like you can buy powdered glucosamine, right? But when you're actually getting it from the bone and the joint, it's actually absorbing into your bone and joint 100%. Whereas when it's a powder or a supplement or a pill, it has to break through the blood-brain barrier. It has to digest through your system. You're going to piss out 30 to 40% of it immediately off the top, no matter what. So this is just a much more cost-effective and productive way to actually nourish yourself and stay well.
Right. And the cannabis for sure as well, because we get a lot of people that come in and their dogs and cats too.
Yeah.
Terrible
cats.
pain.
Yeah.
And they're using it and they're thrilled with the results. Not just the cancer animals, but we get a lot of people that are just concerned about palliative care and, an old
or just
senior
you're
animal.
old and
sure. Well, I'm thinking if
absolutely.
it's good for you when you're old, it's good for you now.
Right,
So
exactly.
I mean, my younger
prevent
dogs
that
get it as well.
elderness. It will prevent the elderness. Is that a word? Elderness? Yeah, elder. You will be less elderly, right?
Yeah, my one dog, the rescue, he had a broken, they dropped him off with a broken leg at the shelter. And anyway, so he used to limp when I got him, little Smith. And I started him on cannabis oil when I got him. He only gets it once a day, but it doesn't matter. His limp stopped. It was probably, 2 weeks, maybe. It's gone. I mean,
it's
he
amazing.
plays like a madman.
Amazing. So we are a CBD-based product, Happy Dog, but something that I have a lot of conversation with people with, and this would be great for you to touch on too, is THC. They're afraid that THC is going to kill their dog.
Well, yeah, and we get that a lot of those questions, but I tell them if whole molecule is what you're going for because that's
Right.
where it's curative. But THC, if you're anytime that you have a bad story that you've read on the internet about THC, it's because the animal's gotten into a product that they shouldn't have gotten into,
Right,
whether
like
it be
chocolate.
an edible.
Right,
There you go.
exactly, an edible, exactly.
So you're having that is what I tell them, in that form of fashion, but also in an edible, when you're buying it from a dispensary, they're fostering that particular
Right.
They're fostering the THC.
Right.
They're removing everything
Right.
else. So it is just so
Except for
high.
us, we don't remove anything. We're a whole plant. But yeah, exactly.
That's-
Like a lot of the stuff that you get from a dispensary is burning off all the other molecules
Right.
besides THC. So you're not going to
So
get the
that's
same
where you're getting
product.
such just like a real intense, experience. So those don't go well. But it's not necessarily the THC. It's the manner or the method or how much they ate. So for example, I fostered a boxer. She decided to counter surf and ate everything off of a counter that was at a 4th of July party. Well, some guests at the 4th of July party were nice enough to bring over something that they had baked specifically for the host. It was not me, but she ate all of them. Okay, so she did not have a good time, but she vomited, the whole spread that she ate. So that was really again a very intense experience because she
Right.
had something that you wouldn't once you have somebody that's helping you dose, you
Right.
would never put them in that
Right,
position.
you would never give your dog,
Right.
like you hopefully would never give your dog a brownie. But we had a client who had a gift box from us that had like all kinds of high dose edibles in it and a psilocybin mushroom bar. And the freaking dog literally opened the box, okay? Opened the box. She sent me like evidence of it and ate everything in it like all of it, ate all of it. And the
Oh,
dog
no way.
slept for hours and threw up.
Yeah.
But the dog is
They're
fine.
fine. Oh, yeah,
And then
Paisley
she
was
said
fine in the morning.
the dog was elderly. She's like, and then the dog was like fine, like super active for like a week afterwards.
You're like, okay, now
I
let's
was
get you
so
something
afraid
to give
as
it
I'm
to her
reading
every
through the
day.
email. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to end badly. And then it ended with, and the dog was great. You know?
I haven't
So
heard of anyone
THC
that, yeah.
will not kill you, no matter if you have
And if you
4
keep
legs
it in-
or
yeah.
2. But you know, exercise caution, right? Your dog will
Sure.
not die if it gets a hold of THC. However, your dog does not really need THC because, again, you know, animals just don't have the same crap going on up here that we have. They are pure heart, and they believe what we give them. If we say this is good for you, they believe it. This is good for me, and then they heal.
Or they're like, that smells good. I'm very interested in that. Getting
Yeah,
back to the foodies, you know,
exactly.
they just want to
Yeah.
eat everything all the time.
Right. Well, Lisa, I really appreciate you coming.
Thanks for
It was
having me,
so much fun.
Robin.
Yeah, this was really great.
Well,
I think
good.
that all you people who would like to learn more from Lisa, you can hit her on her Facebook page, Solely Raw, or solelyraw.com.
Or you can call the office because everyone there is going to help you today.
And that would be 760-736-4457.
Just kidding.
Yeah. Oh, we're gone anyway. Doesn't matter. Oh, okay. All right. And you can, you know, find us here at Happy Dog for sure, and y'all know where to find me. RobinSwan.com, Firebird Touch Therapy. I'm kind of everywhere right now. Thank you.